Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. No real combine news yet. The only real combine news so far is the handful of guys that are either not going to do any on field work or are going to do limited on field work, which is always interesting. Most disappointing one so far would probably be Tyree Wilson. He can't participate because of a foot injury, so he's not going to get the opportunity to do the Travon Walker thing. So that's going to disappoint some people. That's basically the closest thing we have to news as Seahawks fans. Travon Walker will not be able to wow people with his combine because, unfortunately, I mean, it's not like he chose not to. He can't. But anyway, still waiting on some news from Indy this week. So let's take the opportunity to revisit one of the hot topics incoming about the Seattle Seahawks. And I've talked about this a little bit before, but doesn't hurt to revisit it, especially when you get a couple of news items that pertain to it. So yesterday, there were two pieces of football news that seemed unrelated, and on the surface they are. But as a Seahawks fan, I think we can find a way to relate them. So here it is. First news item. Jets open to Geno Smith reunion. This was posted all over the internet. I have the article from Yahoo up, but you can find it anywhere. Basically, the report is the Jets, while they covet Aaron Rodgers more than anybody, are open to bringing back Geno Smith. Now, I guess what else would they say? I don't think they would say something like, oh, we wouldn't touch Geno Smith because we had him 8 years ago and he was terrible. But to the people out there who were under the impression that the Jets wouldn't be interested in Geno because that's where he started his career and it didn't work out, that never really made much sense to me. It was a completely different regime, to my knowledge. I'm the same owner, but it's a lot of stuff has changed since then. So Jets are open to it. And also, another little bit of news that doesn't seem related, but in its own way, I think it kind of is. The Commanders released quarterback Carson Wentz, which it was already pretty much a given they were going to do this. They ate zero dead money on the Carson Wentz contract by releasing him. He played atrociously last year. There was no other move to make. So these two news items on their own, independently, are just kind of like, whatever. But here's the thing. These two teams, the Jets and the Commanders, these two teams, we as Seahawks fans, I think, need to be very invested in seeing what they do in the coming month or so, I want to say. I'll say a month, but it could be a little bit more, a little bit less, whatever. These, to me, if you are starting to think about trading Geno Smith, if you want to tag and trade Geno Smith, which I think more and more Seahawks fans are wanting to do, because the price of Geno Smith seems like it's going up and up and up. And I think people are starting to get put off on the idea of giving Geno Smith 40 mil, 45 mil, which really looks like it might be happening. And they want to try to get some draft capital for him, and they're looking for a team that would take him on. So we've got two teams here. Let's start with the Jets. The Jets have a coach entering his third year. They have a roster that seems ready to win the Super Bowl, at least in the minds of that organization and in the minds of those fans. The Jets are ready to win a Super Bowl if they can get a good quarterback. And by the way, their third-year head coach has yet to have a winning season. You put all that stuff together, and what do you get? Yeah, okay. You've got a team with a lot of talent, a team that seems like they're ready to make a run at it. I mean, they were making a run at it last year, and then they completely collapsed down the stretch because, hey, they didn't have a quarterback. Right now, there are two quarterbacks under contract for the Jets in 2023. Zach Wilson, who they're clearly done with, and Chris Streveler, who they were never into anyway. He's just a guy who's there. So that is the cocktail being brewed in New York right now. Now, over in Washington, you've got the Commanders. They have a coach entering his 4th year. He has yet to produce a winning season. He did make the playoffs one year when the Commanders won the worst division in one of the worst divisions in NFL history. Did not have a winning record that year, though, and is currently sitting on 2 straight non-playoff seasons, entering year 4. Now, whether or not the Commanders are a quarterback away from the Super Bowl, I don't know if they would go that far, but they definitely have some good players, right? They definitely have some good stuff going on over there that just isn't being realized, partially because they don't have good QB play. And right now, as of this moment, the only quarterback under contract for the Commanders in 2023 is Sam Howell, a 5th-round draft pick from last year. Not a guy you're going to bet your make-or-break season on. So we've got 2 teams here that have good players, a pretty good roster. The Jets in particular seem like they have a really good roster. The Commanders, it's got some holes, but it's got some really good stuff as well. They've got coaches who have now had multiple non-playoff losing seasons in a row. In the case of the Commanders, it's actually 3 losing seasons. Just one of them happened to be right place, right time in 2020? Yeah, I think it was 2020. Those coaches are on the hot seat. Those coaches have to be aware that they are probably coaching for their job in 2023. And when you are coaching for your job, or you're general managing, or whatever, you're working for your job, it pushes you to do things that maybe under normal circumstances you would think through and realize, I don't know if we should do that. So let's think about Geno Smith for a second here. Geno Smith is coming off a season where he threw 30 touchdowns, over 4,200 yards, made the Pro Bowl, got to the playoffs with a very bad defense, by the way, and won Comeback Player of the Year. So when you're thinking about the potential of a Geno Smith tag and trade, I want you to look at it in these terms here. Don't think when I posted a video last week, there was a little bit of a debate in the comments section about Geno Smith's trade value. There were some people who were like, oh, he's worth more than a 2nd and a 3rd round pick. You could get more than that. And then there were people who were saying, no, he's not worth that much. He's not going to get that much in a trade. Think about the desperation here. Geno Smith is not just a Pro Bowl quarterback. Geno Smith is not just a quarterback who just made the playoffs. Geno Smith is a life raft for a coach who is sitting there with no quarterback, probably going to get fired if he doesn't make the playoffs in this upcoming year. Neither of these teams have a pick high enough to get the blue chip quarterbacks. And whether or not they like all those blue chip quarterbacks is questionable as well. Like, is Anthony Richardson a blue chip quarterback? Not in this context. Neither of these teams want a guy like Anthony Richardson, because by the time he starts playing well, they're both going to be fired if they take him, probably. So Geno Smith represents a life raft to these 2 coaches. In a way, you could say he represents a potential life raft to the entire Commanders organization, because it seems like Dan Snyder's days of owning the team at all are very, very limited. He might be thinking, screw everything else, let's go win the Super Bowl now so I can get one before the NFL forces me out. So what I'm trying to say here is that when you're trying to determine Geno Smith's trade value, we can go through the logic of it. We can compare him to other players. We can compare it to other trades. We can do all this stuff. But to a certain extent, you can go even beyond that. Think about the desperation here. The Jets, if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, if Aaron Rodgers retires or goes back to Green Bay or whatever, if whatever happens with Aaron Rodgers, then what are their viable options at that point? Jimmy Garoppolo, who is clearly a product of Kyle Shanahan. I got a feeling that Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to look very good in New York. I don't see much from him that's desirable, to be perfectly honest. At that point, Robert Saleh might just be like, okay, I don't care about draft picks. I don't care about money. Just bring me the best quarterback we can get. And that could very well be Geno Smith. Once you get past the Lamar Jacksons, who is going to be crazy expensive. Once you get past the Aaron Rodgers, who may not even be available for multiple reasons, and you get past, I'm not going to say Daniel Jones because Geno's better than Daniel Jones. Once you get past those couple guys right at the top, basically Lamar and Rodgers, there's, what are you going to do? What do you do at that point? Do you just say, oh, well, I guess I'm getting fired, or, gee, I hope Jimmy Garoppolo or Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold, no, not Sam Darnold, Jets are not going to bring him back, but is that good enough? No, don't you instead go, you know what, if I get fired, I can't use those draft picks anyway. If I get fired, the fact that the QB has a massive cap hit in upcoming years means nothing to me. So better to make a big trade for a quarterback like a Geno Smith, even if I'm overpaying in picks and money. What do I care about that stuff? I'm going to get fired if things don't turn around, and I've got limited options to make things turn around. So that's how I'm looking at this, guys. I got to be perfectly honest here. I said second round, third rounder. It would not surprise me if it ended up being more because of this desperation that I'm talking about here. There's not a whole lot these teams can do. They can't draft Bryce Young, can't draft CJ Stroud, can't draft Will Levis, can't draft Anthony Richardson probably too for multiple reasons. You're going to get Lamar Jackson, you're going to get Aaron Rodgers, and then your Geno Smith's probably your next best option. There are a couple other teams you could say this about this too, like maybe the Falcons, but I think these two teams illustrate this point that I'm trying to make more than any other. So I really want to hammer home these two particular teams. In other news, speaking of the franchise tag, the franchise tag race is on officially. We got this late last night from Adam Schefter. Daron Payne has become the first player to receive the franchise tag from Washington. Now, they could theoretically keep him because they just cut Carson Wentz, who was making way more than the tag. The tag for Payne is about $19 million. The Wentz salary this season was way more. They're saving way more money on the Wentz cut than the Payne tag. In fact, they probably cut Wentz so they could make this tag, but you don't want to play a player on the tag. Nobody wants that. They could extend him, but what do you do with Chase Young then? What are you going to do with all these blue chip defensive linemen? Montez Sweat. What do you do with these guys? You can't keep all of them. You can't have 4 hyper expensive defensive linemen on one team. You're not going to have enough money for anything else. So I just spent a little bit of time talking about Washington's situation where they have a probably desperate coach, probably desperate owner, pretty decent roster, and no quarterback whatsoever other than Sam frickin' Howell. So I know some people are going to circle the wagons around the hypothetical Daron Payne for Geno Smith trade, or at least a trade with those two guys as the primaries. I think the Seahawks would probably have to throw in a little bit extra to make that happen. But there it is. Step 1 complete. It's at least possible. So let me know what you guys think about all this. I just really wanted to... final thought here. Final thought that I want to leave you guys with here. Geno Smith right now is about the same age as Russell Wilson was when he was traded last year. About the same age. Geno has way less wear and tear on his body and is coming off a pretty significantly better season. Geno in 2022 was better than Wilson in 2021. Now, I understand that when we traded Wilson and got all that crazy stuff back, obviously Wilson's history as a much better player than he was in 2021 played into that. I get that completely. But regardless, the NFL is supposed to be a what have you done for me lately league. And if Denver was not desperately trying to secure a real quarterback because they hadn't had one in so long, do you think maybe they would have taken a breath, stepped back, and thought, you know, with the season this guy just had, maybe he shouldn't be worth all this stuff? Sure. But they were desperate. So if you're going to tell me that a team is going to give up all that stuff for Russell Wilson coming off his worst season, then Geno Smith, who's coming off a better year and has less wear and tear, You feeling me? All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks.